Yeah, I wanted to make a point. He touched on it. He reminded me of something. In San Diego County, there's a big church called the Rock Church. It's the biggest mega church in San Diego County, and it's just a normal evangelical Christian church. Go to church on Sunday and go through the motions. Well, the got prayer. Uh, pastor got prayer, and somebody I'm familiar with in the region who does a lot of inner healing, deliverance. Well, pastor gets prayer at that church. Excuse me. They pray for him, and he sees this demon come out of his mouth, a black cloud out of his mouth, and he got free of whatever that thing was. And when he got free, it changed his life. And he said, if that's real, I'm all for it. And he changed. He changed, and he changed his church, and it caused a huge split. And that happened about 2 years ago. Because he's like, I'm going after the supernatural. I'm going after the power of God. Now the church split. A lot of people left it and started saying, oh my gosh, it's a cult now. Because now they're praying for the sick and people are getting healed. So yeah, the evidence of a cult. Yeah, sure, yeah, culture. There you go. But yeah, so it started to increase and go on, and like I said before, when it's not just that the reality of he got delivered of this, but he saw the spiritual. The demonic doesn't want you. It's not so much even to believe in them or not to believe in them or not to believe in angels. They don't want you to believe in the supernatural, that reality that I was talking about, the blue pill, seeing behind the veil. They don't want you to believe in that. When Jesus is talking about faith, he's talking about believing in that reality, the unseen. The unseen is where it's all at. So even the demonic can increase your faith. Having the supernatural encounter can increase your faith. I've done a lot of deliverances when people after the deliverance now they're all for Jesus. They're so full on for it now because they experience the supernatural. This is really real. The supernatural God that we talk about, we just have evidence of it, and it's there. And so, one thing about when I have demons and I'll egg them on certain ones to talk. One thing that they'll do, and I love this, is that they'll prophesy over the person. So it's funny when people say, oh, demons lie. I go, well, if they're lying, they're definitely talking about this person's identity. Because what they're doing is that they see what's over you. And so what the demon will do is they go, we got to stop this one because this one is supposed to do this and this and this and this. And God has a mark on them, blah, blah, blah. And it looks like this. And they have it. And so they're already prophesying everything over in the spirit realm of what they see. And I'm just recording. I'm going, oh, man, I can't wait for the person to really hear this because the demon is just totally laying out what God sees over their life. And the demon's just telling me what they're trying to stop. Because if they don't stop, they're going to go on and they're going to become a teacher and they're going to go start trend. We see like lightning over this person and God really loves that one and he's after him. And that's why there's so many angels being sent towards him. I mean, when a person hears that, they get so encouraged. And I love it because they shoot themselves in the foot. They get exposed. I mean, and I don't even tell the demon I've recorded it. So... But usually, sometimes the person will hear it, and I go, did you hear what the demon said? I go, that's why they want to stop you, because they see what you have coming down the road. That's why you got so many coming after you, because they see what God is going to use you in. They see the power that you possess, and they just blew it now. So, anyways, all right. So, done with that. Now, fragments. Now, I first entered into this when I was praying for my friend, and I was trying to cast a demon out of him. And, I'm still asking more questions. God, I'm seeing more people get healed from having deliverance. But I'm not seeing it still. I'm not seeing it to the fullest extent. I'm still seeing a level of physical healing and emotional healing. But I'm seeing more than when I was just doing stuff on the street. And then I remember I'm casting out a demon, trying to move it out of my friend. And then all of a sudden, I hear this, Jesus, no, no, stop, Jesus, no. And I'm kind of like, what? What the heck? that doesn't make any sense. Jesus, no. And I'm like going, get out. I don't even remember what I was saying because it just threw me for a loop, which normally does when you start doing this stuff. You're going to run into stuff that you have no grid for. So I'm trying to cast this thing out, and I just said, Jesus, come. Jesus, come. And I'm hearing him saying, Jesus, no, no. And then finally it's over. My friend's done, and he's calm. So I'm like, dude, like waiting for him to recover. I'm like, what's up? And he's like, dude, I saw myself as a little kid, and I was in a cell. I was in like a prison cell. And Jesus would come in. I saw Jesus come in, and he started raping me. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden, the imagery, when you were praying, the imagery of Jesus turned into a demon. And I'm like, And then Jesus came in and grabbed him and pulled him out. And then all of a sudden, I felt this peace come over me. Whew. And I was like, what the heck? Because I had a kind of a grid. So I heard about this concept earlier, and I didn't expect it to happen just like that. I thought it would be a little easier case. And so something happened. I don't know what age with the boy, with him. And I didn't know really how to figure out the trauma in that situation, and so there was some wounding there, an issue with God, with Jesus specifically, and he fragmented off, and all of a sudden you have this demon that's coming in and replicating a repetitive wound in him. Over and over, year after year, doing the same exact thing. When that happened, when he got integrated, when he got healed and integrated to that thing, he said, I can feel it now where I couldn't feel it then. I felt like there was always, in the back of my mind, it was just like this slight resistance that I had towards Jesus. But now that after that happened, I feel there's no obstacle in the way. Totally different now. Because there was this resistance, and it was a part of him that held back. So the next time after that, I remember I'm in my bedroom, or no, I'm out in the TV room, and then I hear my girlfriend Brittany, she goes into the back room, and I hear her crying. You know, I'm just thinking, okay, she's crying, I don't know what, and then it's getting a little bit more loud, and I go into the room, and as I open up the room, she like freaks out and crawls under the bed. And I'm going, that's weird. What's going on? Crawls under the bed, and she's trying to get under the bed. She couldn't get under the bed. It's real low to the ground. And I go, it's okay. And she's just like trying to pull away from me. And I'm like, what's going on? And then she finally starts coming out of it. And then she starts telling me she starts seeing herself as this little girl. And she saw me as a threat. And I'm like, okay, we got something else here. So I had a friend who's been doing ministry for 30 years, Deliverance and beyond, like I'd never heard. And so I took her up to him, and he started to pray for her. And he sees in the Spirit, and his wife really sees in the Spirit, and he starts praying for her. And he tells her to close her eyes, kind of like what I was talking about with the courtrooms. And he tells her, all right, you're walking in a hallway, and it's real dark, and you're going to see cells on each side of you. And she could see it, real vivid, everywhere. There's cells on, and he says, just keep looking straight. Okay, I know it's cold, and she starts feeling it's cold. And don't look to the left, don't look to the right. And she can hear things screaming at her. And there's an angel on her right, there's an angel on her left, and then Jesus is behind her. So she's rocking forward, and she's going forward. And he said, just, and Jesus is saying, it's okay, just keep going forward. So she keeps going forward. And then they go up to a cell, and he says, all right, Jesus is going to hand you a key. Everything that he was saying, it was happening, and it was very vivid, extremely visual. She opens it up, the door opens, and she sees herself as a little girl in there. And Jesus says, you need to go in there. She says, I could see myself as a 4-year-old girl. and she grabs her. She was really emaciated. She was really you could just tell she was sick, and she grabs her and picks her up and takes her out. Takes her out of the cell, and they close it, and then they keep walking forward, and then Jesus comes and says, give her to me. And Jesus took her, and it was gone. And then after that, she got hit, flew back in the couch behind her, and was shaking for like 15 minutes, and got delivered of something way off of her generational line. Okay, and I'm not sure how that fragment really worked into what the generational line thing did in that instance, because I was new to it, and I'm going, what the heck is this? Oh man, I've been getting stretched so much in these last 2 years. Again, we're going more and more, and but I'm eager to learn, and I've been asking the questions. God, I want to see the fruit. I want to see people set free 100%, not just a little bit, not just only certain cases. I want to see everybody just like on your level. So keep stretching me, Lord. So what is a fragment? What is you can call them fractures, fragments, alters, slivers. People have different names. And it is definitely known in the secular world, called MPD, multiple personality disorder, or DID, dissociative identity disorder. And in that world, they look at it, it's all in your brain. It's all in the way that your brain works, the functionality of it. So they really don't have a solution. They just kind of teach you how to manage it. You get counseling the rest of your life, and you're on medication to help you cope. And so they know it's real. But in our world, we know that this is a spiritual issue, and we can fix it 100%. And this is why I love this ministry so much. I've seen so much fruit come from this, and faster than I've ever done before. I've seen healing in people come so much quicker from this ministry. And so what is a fragment? When you look at the fragment, when a person gets wounded, say an incident happened at 5 years old, something very traumatic happens, molestation, physical abuse, rejection, you name it. There's so many different types of abuse out there. The child takes the trauma, and it's so painful for the trauma, God has created a mechanism in your soul to be able to break off. And that mechanism breaks off so it can hold that trauma and that pain in it. And when it breaks off, it kind of floats off. It's almost like it has like a tether to it. It literally is connected to the main body of the soul, of the person's soul. And it's kind of floats out here. Well, what happens is that when it's out there, demons will come and they'll take it and imprison it. And they'll keep it locked up. So the person stays in this state, but they can stay in that state without having to experience so much trauma. If your soul didn't do that and the person went through all the abuse without that coping mechanism, because like I said, it pushes it away so you don't have to feel it. It pushes it away so you don't have to feel it to its brunt, the brunt force of it. If they didn't do it, the child would probably implode. Because, if you've gone through abuse after abuse, every day you're getting raped by somebody, horrible abuse, the child would not be able to function. And this is the way to keep it functioning. And so a person can have multiple fragments as they go on through life. And so as they get older, they start living their life, and certain things will start happening. Like somebody does something or says something that's familiar to the way they were traumatized when they were 5. And all of a sudden it reminds them, it triggers that memory, because that little fragment holds all that memory. And the fragment, it travels through the physical body, goes through the soul, goes through that little tether, hits the fragment reacts, The reaction follows back to the tether. It hits the core of the person, and the person starts reacting out of nowhere. From like, why in the world am I freaking out because of what that person said? It doesn't make any sense. Why am I feeling this? Why am I having a panic attack? Why am I having an anxiety attack out of for no reason? It doesn't make any sense. And I can't control it right now. I'm trying to control it. Why am I freaking out over just this little thing? Nobody's freaking out over it. They just said something real minuscule. That's where it's coming from. It's the part that's freaking out, and they're feeling the effects of the part, and they're starting to freak. And have you ever? And it's my opinion that most people have fragments, and just like most people have demons. And it's okay. But here's a good example. Have you ever had the time where you flew off the handle and you got so angry and you lost your temper and you just went into kind of a rage and you, for a moment, and you're like, and then you calm back down and you're like, man, I couldn't control that for a few seconds. That's a fragment. That's a fragment. And that's why you couldn't control it. There's a part of you that responds that way. When you're pushed to the brink, there's a little fragment that starts to take control, and he comes up and he operates for that reason, because that's what the fragment is supposed to be used for. People a lot of times could hide behind their fragments throughout life, and they'll operate from their fragments to deal with life. So when the trauma comes up, the core of the person will go down, and the fragment will come back up and start taking control. And so they're the ones that will take the brunt of it. They will take the trauma or whatever to protect the core. It's all about protecting the core. Because if that doesn't happen, then the fragment will break off. Then the core will start fragmenting even more. Boom, boom, boom. And sometimes I've seen it where fragments can fragment again. So you have one fragment that fragments off another one, too, because the part itself gets hurt. So, so when it comes to the fragment being pulled out to this scenario, the demonic sees it and it uses it as a way to attack the core of the person. The fragment is there, and the demon will imprison it. And a lot of times, if you have a fragment come up, you can ask the demon or ask the fragment, so where are you at? What does it look like to you? And the fragment will tell you. Usually it's dark, and they'll say it's like a dark room or a dark cell, something like that. Or it will say, I'm in my bedroom, and I'm all alone. Or I'm in the kitchen, Sometimes it could be an issue of where the pain happened. And so there's different locations where it would be. And it's in a dimension. This fragment is in a dimension separate from obviously where we're at. A lot of times when a person gets fragmented, the child, if it's of the mother, and I've had this many times, say if the mother brought some wounding on the child, there was this one instance where the person was in bed. The mother came and got her. Mother came and got her, dragged her out of bed, and said, "Get it," dragged her over and pushed her head in the toilet because I guess she ate something that she showed, or she was really mad at her, and she said, "You need to throw that up or spit it up." She ate like candy or something, and just held her head down, kind of pushed her head down into the toilet. And so that was the actual incident. The fragment would have a demon come and grab it and relive that incident. But the fragment would look like the mother, but with usually red eyes. And so it would keep what's that? Yes, the demon would look. Yeah. And it would keep reliving that incident because the fragment wants to keep it in that traumatic state always, so it doesn't get out of it, so it won't grow. Yes, yeah. Okay, so, Yeah.
Fragmented space.
Yeah, feel free to correct me. It's okay. Yeah. Okay, so the goal is to heal and integrate the part. The ultimate goal is to take that part and then put it right back into the person where it originally came from. And once that happens, the voices will stop, at least from that part. The voices will stop. And the poor, because a lot of times people who are severe cases will hear voices all day long. It's not schizophrenia, okay? It's just a complete there's different types of schizophrenia. Go ahead.
One of the things, I've known a number of these folks with myriad fragments. One of the jokes that they have amongst themselves is, if you want to tell, at the time they were MPDs, if you want to tell the difference between MPD and schizophrenia, hand them a gun and tell them to shoot where the voices are at.
Yeah.
And if they're MPDs, the voices are inside. And if they're schizophrenic, the voices are outside.
Mm.
And a gal that I knew had an integration, and she was in her kitchen and she was doing a bunch of cooking and stuff. And she's really short. She doesn't think too much about it. And at one point, she looked around and every cupboard in her kitchen was wide open. And she thought about it and she didn't know why for a few minutes. And then it dawned on her that the one whose job it was to make sure that the cupboards got closed had been integrated in a session that week.
Mm. Yep.
So she had to think about closing the doors now because
Mhm.
who was in charge of it was no longer there.
Right. Right. So, yeah. Brought up a point that I wanted to make about memories. No, you jogged an important thing. Yeah.
Only that way.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. A lot of times, you will know. It's good evidence that if you can't remember a lot of your childhood, it's a good chance that there's a lot of fragmenting that happened. You look back on your childhood and you can't have a gap between maybe 3 all the way to 6 or 10 or 12. It's because there's fragments there, and they have the memory. They have all the memory is in you, everything. It's just that they are protecting a lot of it. And a lot of times through your life, you were living out of fragments. You never would have known. So that's why if you ever talk to people, you go, yeah, I can't really remember much of my childhood, especially between that time frame. You go back there.
Does a fragment ever, or how often does a fragment become the dominant external personality?
It happens a lot. Yeah, I've seen where a person just lets the part come up, and usually because the person on the inside is so timid, especially maybe areas where there's a lot of people, they're going to let that fragment come out because they're too afraid of what people seeing them, being rejected. So that there's a fragment that will come up and kind of take charge, and that.
The doctor had said, I'm about to give you a shot, and they shut out this little girl. It was her job to take the shots.
Yeah.
They fragment to the point where, like the thing with don't eat this, someone else gets to eat that sometimes. I mean, they fragment in ways where it's a coping mechanism, and everything's about coping.
Yeah.
I've run across people that were actually fragmented in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
On purpose. I don't know how many people from Missouri you've run across, but Missouri is an evil place for that kind of thing. There are families that do it on purpose for the life of a child.
Yeah. Yep.
But they share responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a cooperative a lot of the time.
Right.
Shut up.
No, it's good. It's good. No, the parts, they will. Sometimes there's going to be a dominant part that usually kind of oversees all the other parts, and some will be protective of other parts. And there are people that just don't even know that they have parts, and there are parts that don't even know that they are a part. Sometimes they think they are the person.
For definitional sake, because again, I think what you're saying is, so you have a dominant part that oversees the other part, and all I'm going now back is to what we were talking about this morning, in the demonic and
Yeah.
the stronghold. So again, you have the fracturing, which is also an emotional capitalization aspect. protection, as you said. Yeah, at the same point, it opens that wound, it opens up the hurt, which gives access and permission.
Mhm.
So we're talking about that the parts have different roles and responsibilities. Is it the demon that's coming in, or is there? I mean, see what I'm saying? There's parallel.
No. The fragment is the one that's in charge. It's not, but I mean, some fragments are still locked up, and some kind of are a little bit more freer than others. They're not all in the same
Fragment
position.
you're talking about there is the emotional psyche versus the demonic.
Yeah, yeah. So you're just going to have some.
Parallel, though.
Are you talking about in the way that they are?
Language-wise, as you're saying, the fragments, there's gonna be one that's gonna oversee the other fragments.
Mhm.
It's gonna,
Yeah.
fragment underneath it and splinter off.
Mhm.
Yet the same thing happens in the demonic realm.
Yeah, but they don't break up. Yeah, there is a hierarchy. Yes.
A similarity.
Uh-huh. Kind of like that. I mean, it is.
Fragments are still part of the person.
Yeah.
They're part of the center entity.
Of what?
Of the person.
That person.
Well, the psyche.
Yeah, because the soul, they are a part of that person's soul. So the soul literally is broken off.
Right.
And so
Separated itself for
yeah.
protection.
Right. And the thing is that they have their own will. They are their own separate person.
That fragment against you.
And they will work, yes, they will work against you. I'll be giving you some examples of that, of how they operate. So, characteristics. They're all different ages. Some you'll have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. You'll have several of the same age. You'll have maybe a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old. You'll have some that are older than you. I had a friend who had one who was 60 years old, and he was a serial killer. And the way, and I would try to figure out how that happened. Well, I had to do a little investigating, and when he was young, at like 6 or 7, him and his friend imagined that they were serial killers, and they created, like, this is what I would be, and I would do this, and this is the way I would kill the person, and this is the way I would do it, blah 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 blah. And what happened later was that Jesus showed him in a dream that Jesus purposely fragmented him off, because if he didn't do that, he could have become it. Yeah. Jesus did out as for protection.
Saying that a fragment, I mean, if he went with that, the fragment could take complete control.
Yeah, he would have started operating in that persona. Yeah. Now, obviously, the demonic was stirring that up in him, the ideas, and he was going with it. He was going with it, and Jesus broke it off. And the fragment would have taken control, or no, he would have taken control. He would have brought on that identity. So Jesus broke that off of his soul and moved it out here. Yeah.
So you've got somebody with addictions.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how hard they try, the fragment could be completely.
Yes. Yes.
And until that fragment is healed, the addiction is not going away.
Yes. That's why sometimes when people are trying to do deliverance, trying to cast out the demon for certain addictions, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you can just break it off somebody real easy, and then sometimes you can't break it off real easy. Yeah, because it's the fragment that needs the healing. This was weird for me too when I first started. Trust me. It was weird for me. It was really weird for me. But when I started seeing the fruit from this, from the healing that would happen, and the how quickly the healing happened in the person, I was just like, okay, this is what I'm about. I'm going to do this because I'm seeing this working even quicker than just doing regular inner healing on people. Like, wow. The difference, what I would say from inner healing than working with a fragment is like inner healing is like taking a pill and it's going down affecting your organ. This is basically cutting you open and working directly on the organ itself. You're working on the actual wound. And see, there's not a lot of headway with this because it just has not been talked too much about. And it is, again, is like I said, nobody teaches on the soul. We don't teach on the things in the spiritual realm, so this is just so foreign to us. But God is just releasing knowledge on the earth. He's releasing not just the knowledge of the kingdom, but the knowledge of how we're made, how we're created. Because I think we're open to it now, and we're not just saying everything is of the devil. Because there's some ministries out there that go, all fragments are demons. And I remember, that's what you can't take authority over a fragment. You can try all day long. Because you can't, because it's a person's will. You can't take authority over a fragment. And you'll just hurt them even more. And that's why I think some of the problem with some deliverance ministries, when the person's manifesting, sometimes the fragment may look like a demon, and they're trying to, come on, da, 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 and the fragment's just getting more wounded because they're being treated like a demon. So I've had many fragments who think they're demons. Until Jesus comes in and changes their thinking. So there's different ages, all different types. And usually the children, some of them are really scared and they're timid. Then you're going to get into the adolescent ones, and those are the ones with the attitudes. And I remember one, this was like a week ago. She was over at our house, and I remember working with her, and she was the one that I stabbed with a sword. Okay? Well, all of a sudden, this fragment comes up, and it's like a 14-year-old girl. And she's like, I go, hey, what's going on? She's like, nothing. Like, what's, so do you have a favorite color? Blue. And I'm trying to just get a conversation going with her because she just doesn't want to talk. And so a lot of them are just going to have that type of attitude, and they're going to be difficult to deal with at times. Different genders.
I'm just hearing fragment for the first time. Could a fragment taking control look like a psychotic episode?
It can, yeah. There's a fragment I was going to talk about, and I'm getting close to it. That looks like a psychotic episode, yeah.
And then, so how do you determine the fragment versus the demon and then touch?
Well, it's something that as you just keep going on, the more experience you get, the more you kind of understand the difference. But you have to, ultimately, Jesus, when I start getting into the actual healing of it, you're bringing Jesus in it. And the beauty of working with fragments is that they are in the spirit realm. So they will see angels and Jesus a whole lot easier than you can. So you may not be a seer, you may not see in the spirit, but your fragments can. And that's what's so cool. So they can have Jesus and they can feel his presence. And once you actually start working with the fragments, I've seen a lot of people who don't ever feel the presence of God start feeling the presence of God for the first time. No, just because we got the fragment in touch with Jesus. So they're different genders, and many times I'll see that the person has it's a girl and she's got a guy type of fragment. It's a male fragment, and a lot of times their voice will change. And a lot of times, when I'm talking to a fragment, usually their voice is different. Their voice will. I've had different types that will have like a kid sounding voice, and they'll use kid words. Mm-hmm.
I've heard of them with actual physical manifestations from the time that they were created, or like one will need a person will need glasses, but their fragment won't.
Yeah.
All kinds of it.
Yep.
A list will show up, or all kinds
Yeah,
of
a list will show up. This was when I first started this. I was working with Brittany, and she started talking in a Southern accent. And I'm like, and she's like, well, I don't know. And her name was Belinda. That's how she talked. I'm like, and the whole time you're doing this, you're going, are they faking it? Is this really happening? You do that the entire time, but then you have to sit back. I go, why in the world would they fake it? Because it's embarrassing for some people. It's just like, what? Yeah, they wouldn't want, yeah. So, and then I recorded her while she was talking, and then when I was done, we were done. She came back up, and she's like, whoa, she comes out of it. And then I let her, I go, did you know you were talking in a Southern accent? She's like, no. Because she can hear herself, and it sounded like the way she normally talks. And I let her hear it on her phone, and she's like floored. She's like, what the heck? That's crazy. Well, the reason why it was a Southern accent was because when she was 13, she liked the Southern accent, and she'd go around the house talking in a Southern accent. And somehow this fragment just started to keep that as the regular dialect that it would use. So the different genders. This one lady I'd work with, she had this fragment, and she is very feminine when she talks, but when this guy fragment that she had, which was her main fragment, would come up, she would talk like the surfer dude. Her voice would deepen, and she'd go, "Bro, Steve, man." And I mean, it was so. I had days conversations with this fragment many times. He's like, "Steve, man," oh, and he loved eating pizza and drinking beer all the time. There was one time where she was out for an entire week. The fragment was up. That fragment was up, and he goes, "Hey, Steve, watch this. I can disguise my voice pretty well, so people won't know that it's me." And his name was Shooter. He's like, people won't know that it's me when I'm talking. And she would, all of a sudden, he would change his voice. He goes, "Look, it's so and so. I'm talking this way, you know." And I'm like, "Yeah, you can." I go, "Shooter, you can pull it off." He's like, "Yeah, I know. I can. I'm pretty good at it. Proud of myself." He was a funny guy to get around, but in that week, he ate all this pizza, and he would just sit and veg in front of the television. When she came out of it, she was 10 pounds more, and she was ticked. She was ticked at her fragment. She was so mad because she's a jogger. She's, she's fitness. She does all that stuff. And that is a bad scenario because it's like, man, you're 10 pounds more, and you didn't even get to enjoy any of that, you know. So I felt bad for her. I go, I'd be mad too. And yeah, they all have different preferences. Like I've said, some will like certain foods, and some won't like certain foods. So now here's the other thing. Some may know Jesus, and some may not know Jesus. Some are completely foreign to him. Some have never heard. And the ones that are usually never heard, if you're a Christian, that have never heard, are the ones that are really buried deep, because there's levels. And the ones that are buried deep don't have connection with day-to-day life. They fragmented once a long time ago, and they got buried down deep. And the only time they may have come up only 2 or 3 times in that person's life. And so, I've just seen some of these fragments, and one of them would only come up in like fight or flight situations. Yeah. And this one's name, it had the name of FUCK.
Because that's what you say before you're in that.
Well, yeah, pretty much. But well,
I knew had one called Bolt Force. He broke the springs on the garage door when he opened it. And she's 5'2" and weighs 95 pounds.
yeah. So, well, unfortunately, the reason why this one was named that was because of what it was called by the dad. And so the dad was abusive. It's okay. The dad was abusive to her and would almost like push her to the limits. And so this fragment would only come up in the time, and I mean it would use the same term, balls to the wall, man, balls to the wall, and it would want to fight. It would just want to fight. That's all it would do. It was that type of energy that would come out of it. And I remember it manifested a couple times. One time it was in the back of my car, and I remember we're sitting there after this situation, and he comes up all of a sudden, and I'm like, oh crap, because he's like, whose car am I in? Whose car am I in? And he's freaking out. I'm like going, oh no. I kept thinking, okay, how do we do this? And I don't remember what I said, but I locked the doors. I didn't want him to jump out of the door. And then finally, I prayed, and he did something, and he just went down, and he just went out like that. And I'm like, whew. But I remember when I encountered him a second time, he came up, and I said, have you ever heard of Jesus? He's like, no, I've never heard of Jesus. I go, have you ever, really? He's like, no. I go, have you ever heard of God? He's like, no. You never heard of God? I'm like, I go, do you know what God is? He's like, no. And I said, and I try to think how to explain it, because if this fragment is buried so deep, it means it's almost like it's been in a time capsule, so it hasn't grown to the type of competence that we would kind of take for granted. So I just started trying to explain what God is, that he creates things. Do you know what create means? Started using that and started telling him. And then as he's calming down, I'm getting him to calm down, because he'd only come up in high adrenaline situations. He's calming down, and I'm just having conversation with him. Just conversation. And he's calming down, and he's learning to trust me. Because that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to trust, because they don't trust people. So he's calming down, and then all of a sudden he goes, whoa, what the heck? And he starts floating. Fragment starts floating up. Because I started, as he's becoming more open to Jesus, and he's not resisting, the presence of God starts to fill the room. And the fragment is getting in this more sedate state, which it never has been in, because it's always been at a high level, amped up state. So that was really cool, just to see that, because we got headway. And once they have an encounter like that, usually they'll not be at that extreme level than before, once they get some contact like that. Now here's another one. This was out of a friend of mine who really, 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 really loves Jesus. And then I get this fragment that wants to, he comes up and he says, I know what you're trying to do. I've seen what you do. You want to bring Jesus. I don't like Jesus. I don't want Jesus at all. Get Jesus away from me. And so I'm going, okay, this is going to be a problem, because this is a fragment that really struggled with, okay, have you ever heard of incubus and succubus? Yes. Okay, I didn't believe that they were real until I started doing this stuff. Okay. Incubus and succubus, they're demons that, incubus, succubus. It's a female demon. It's basically where people have sex with demons. Okay? So I'm stretching you. Okay? So he had a succubus spirit come and visit him in the middle of the night. And he thought it was his wife. Kind of, what he said. Because he could feel in the spirit, so he physically could feel a body press against him and have pleasure him. And he let it happen. Well, when that happened, it really jacked him up. It jacked him up. And it took us about a good month to start getting everything back in order. It took a lot of his seeing ability away, a lot of his spiritual, because it like implanted something into him, which is why you don't do stuff like that. And it's a running joke now, ever since he did that. Just say no to succubuses. Don't ever do that. But people, a lot of times, these types of spirits will come to people when they're lonely, when they're really lonely, and you wouldn't think that they would engage with it, but they do, and they do a lot of bad stuff to you. Well, I'm dealing with this fragment, and this fragment is still, because my friend is still struggling with sexual stuff. He's trying everything he can on his end to say no to just anything, pornography, whatever in his life. But he's got a fragment that is definitely not saying no, and he's welcoming these demonic spirits to have sex with him. And he's like, I want it. This is what I want to do. I'm going to do it. And so I had to get real firm with this fragment. I go, you got to, and normally I'm not going to get that tough with the fragment, but in certain cases I will. And I said, you're going to have to stop doing this, because if you don't, you're being very selfish, number one, and this is being a problem for so and so. And he's like, no, I'm going to do it. I don't care. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. I don't care what. so-and-so thinks. I don't care if he's being very selfish. I'm thinking, I don't know what to do. Because I'd have Jesus try to come in, and he's like, no. I remember I tried to bind him because he literally got up in his body and ran out the room. I'm like, get back in here now. You're not going to take his body and just start doing stuff with him, you know. And so he was just being really unruly, and he was going to hurt him. He was going to, in whatever way. And this is the reason why he's been struggling. So my friend is really trying hard to resist all this stuff, but this fragment is really screwing it up. So I just said to the fragment, I go, and I felt like the Lord gave me a solution because it was the only thing that I didn't know what to do because of the situation that we were in. The fragment wouldn't want to cooperate. And my friend wanted some sort of peace and resolution. So I said, I told the fragment, I go, okay, all right, look, you have a cord and you're attached to him. I'm going to cut that cord for a time if you don't stop. And you understand, if I cut that cord, you're going to get really tormented. And those demons are not going to really care about you. They're only treating you good right now because you're attached to him. Because they're only using you to get to him. They can torment you and try to, because they know that your emotions will affect him. So I will cut off your cord to him, and when they do that, they're going to take you and they're going to beat you up. I go, it's up to you, because he needs some peace right now, and this is our only option. And he's like, and all of a sudden he stops and he asks the demon. He goes, "Is that true?" And he says, "Yeah." If the demon said, "If you get cut off, we're going to torment you." And he's like, "No." He thought I was bluffing. And I said, all right. So we went up to the courtroom in heaven and went to the Father and we went to asked the Father what to do. And he heard what the Lord said. He said, 2 weeks from today is when he's going to be cut off and we'll reattach him from that point on. And from when we did, Jesus told him the exact date of when we're going to reattach it. So we cut it off, and the moment we cut it off, all those feelings were gone. All right. And so after that, it took about, 2 weeks. He put it on his phone when we were done. He put it back on his phone, and he said, "Oh, today's the day." And so I get it, and we reattach that cord. And when we reattached the cord, the fragment was definitely humbled and very cooperative. And he was at that state where he's like, okay, because it wasn't an issue of punishment. It was just like this: if this is what you want, then this is what you get. This is yours. It's kind of like where Paul said, "Turn him over to Satan," and that because we can't cooperate. This is your free will, and you're hurting. It's the issue that you're hurting somebody else. That's the problem. I go, if this wasn't a problem with him, where it wasn't affecting him so much, then no, this wouldn't have been the issue. It was just that we had to protect the core, and the part was hurting the core. And so when he came back and he was humble, and then now he was open to Jesus, and Jesus comes in and loves on that fragment, and that fragment felt love for the first time. Jesus' love came in, and the fragment just melted in Jesus' arm. He's just bawling like a baby, getting healing, and we got to integrate that part. And it was awesome. And that area in his life really got transformed. It was so cool. So, like I said, there are times where you can confuse a demon for a fragment. And I remember I worked on this lady a long time ago. I was trying to figure out her issue with, that chemical sensitivity thing? Chemical sensitivity. And so all I knew was just authority for healing. Or no, I was casting out demons. And so I remember trying to cast out this demon, and I'm doing everything I can, and he's going, stop it. But I really was not getting any headway. And I'm like, man, this demon just does not cooperate. And unfortunately, I never got to see that lady again. But I know now I was dealing with a fragment who's just been more abused, And so Yeah, I've looked for her because I wanted to try to reach her again. But yeah, another time there was a friend calls me up on the phone and he brought a prostitute into his house, him and his wife. And he said, "Steve, I need help." The guy on Facebook, he's like, "Steve, I need help. I don't know what to do. This lady's talking in all these crazy voices, and we're trying to cast out this demon, when this demon will not come out. This demon will not come out." And I'm going, okay. Let me put it on speakerphone. So I'm listening, and then I hear what she's saying, and the Holy Spirit said it's Fragment. And I just by my experience and what I can see the Lord showing me in the Spirit. And then I said, "Dude, you can't cast it out. It's what's called a part, or it's a fragment of somebody." And I go, let me talk to her. And I started talking to her, and I started speaking to it, and I started calming her down. And then I asked the Lord to take that part and integrate it. And all of a sudden, she just stopped, and everything, the manifestation stopped, because before she was going outside in the snow and it was cold and all that stuff. And they brought her back in, calmed her down, and everything. She's like, "Man, what happened to me?" She's like, "Man, I didn't even know." And they got to pray over her and felt God's love in her. So that was really cool. Let's see. See how much time. All right. Think. Well, does anybody have any questions?
What's involved in the integration?
Jesus,
Just Jesus.
typically.
Just Jesus.
Jesus, Holy Spirit, or the Father. Like, I mean, sometimes you're going to need the Father for specific issues. But Jesus helps out a lot, and the Holy Spirit does too. They'll see the Holy Spirit. But, yeah.
How do fragments feel about their form?
Some of them hate him, and some of them like him. Some of them really want to protect him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have to, I remember, a couple of them, wanting to team up on me because they thought I was being like their dad or their mom or whatever. I can't remember. And I'm just saying, no, just, all right, it's cool. It's cool, man. It's cool. So,
Do you deal with a fragment on your own? Or do you
oh, yeah, that's another thing. You can deal with them on your own. Like my girlfriend, Brittany, she's had a lot of integration. She's had a lot of healing. And I don't work with her really as much. She sometimes will ask me to help work with her. But she can do a lot of it on her own. And Jesus will come and she'll have them integrate. So she integrates, and Jesus heals a lot of things. So with her. But the only ones that are really difficult, she'll call me in to help her do. Because sometimes it can be difficult to orchestrate it, because you're really more like the director or the chaperone when you're involved in something like this. You're just guiding Jesus, because sometimes you don't need to do that, but sometimes you got to get Jesus and you got to tell Jesus what to do. And sometimes all you need to do is just have Jesus show up, and then bam. And sometimes Jesus will just show up out of nowhere. So, I mean, it's really cool when that happens, and then Jesus just takes in. But I don't understand always why it happens like that. Sometimes it'll happen when the Holy Spirit tells you what to tell Jesus, and then it really works well, and Jesus does his job. I remember with this one guy, he had this issue, and he had the fear of the demonic. Like, fear of demons there's a demon that is the fear of demons, So, but he was always afraid of demonic, the supernatural. And so I started calling a fragment to come up. And the fragment came up, and the fragment was saying, "This isn't real. This isn't real." And he was so confused what was going on. He's like, "This is real. No, it's not real. It doesn't make any sense." And then all of a sudden he'd start growling, "Rah," like that. I go, "Well, then what was that if that wasn't real?" "I don't know." Now this is the fragment telling you. And then all of a sudden he gets thrown back onto the bed. And he's growling. And then he gets back up. He's like, I said, what was that?" And he's like, I don't I don't know. What the heck's happening? The fragment's trying to figure out who he is. Because fragments don't always have names. Fragments think either they're the core of the person or they just don't even have some sort of identity. And sometimes we will give them names because it just helps to identify them, so you know who to have come up. And then also it is good for them to have an identity. So you can ask Father sometimes for a prophetic name to speak over them. It means this. And some of them really do want to have a name. They want to be known as something. And but working with this guy, he had this fragment who was afraid of anything spiritual, because what would happen when he was 5 years old, he would see things. He would see demons in the room. And his solution was, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. And he would just do that. So that's why he shut down everything. When you're shutting that down, you're also going to shut down the Holy Spirit too. So he would just, anything spiritual, it was not real. So he always would struggle with believing in God and faith in God and faith in anything of the power of God, until we dealt with that fragment, and that fragment took time. It took time to work with the fragment. The thing began to open up, and we could get healing in it. So much healing will happen just by me talking to it. Sometimes that is a huge level of healing when you just talk to the fragment. And a lot of them have never been talked to. A lot of them have stayed down, and they have been in darkness for a long, long time. And just being acknowledged is a form of healing. But ultimately, we're going to get Jesus, and we're going to get him, and we're going to have him start to work with that part and heal that part. So
Can we do this ourselves? Like, to where God, because God is, with us. And there was a time when I had to lay in bed for a while because of some things. And so God started, like, with diabetes was, being, like, I don't have to take insulin anymore. Eyesight was healed. And it was just, like, sometimes crying a lot. And, like, just feeling like releasing and stuff. Is that almost like what you're talking about? Something to, to where you're being healed from something?
Sometimes God is actually healing a part, and you wouldn't have even known it.
Right.
Have known it. You even know that it was actually God working on a part.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one thing I forgot to mention, and this has to kind of do with deliverance, since you brought that up, because it's a very important factor when it comes to getting physically healed. The reason why not everything is a demonic spirit. So when a person has gone through major trauma in their past, when it comes to diseases a lot, your body releases chemicals. The wrong chemicals when you're stressed out, when you're fearful, when you're in a state of worry, your body is releasing chemicals. So a lot of times, especially in autoimmune diseases, when you get older, your body begins to break down because those chemicals are being released too much prematurely. They shouldn't be released in the way that they're doing it, and it's starting to break down the nerves of your body. So over time, once you get in your 20s or 30s, you start having the effects of certain autoimmune diseases or diseases in general. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, MPD, a lot of things come up. And it's not a demon, but the cause of it, the emotion, is demonic. The things provoking the anger, provoking the worry, provoking the fear, and it's creating your body to break down. So that's why when you're trying to pray and take authority for healing over certain things, it's not. So when I was talking about Jesus is telling you, don't let the sun go down in your anger, forgive those who curse you, don't fear, all those things, it's also for your physical body. Because there is that sort of responsibility, okay, I got to take care of myself, because I will break down my own body. So when I'm working with people, the emotional healing starts healing them. Their body starts getting healed naturally because their immune system has been broken down, shut down, and now their body is starting to rejuvenate itself. So over time, the pain gets less and less. over about the more they get relieved of fear, anxiety, and when whatever the issues are, the body begins to heal itself, and the autoimmune begins to fade over a period, maybe sometimes 3 months, depending on how much the person is getting healing emotionally. And this goes with fragments. And the more the fragments get healed, because the fragments are creating the reaction, sending the impulses back into the person, and your body is releasing chemicals. The body starts breaking down over time. I mean, we know that wrong thinking will cause our body to break down. High blood pressure, ulcers, things like that come from worry. People who, high stress. I do believe that anxiety attacks are fragments. And so a lot of times people, like I said earlier on, when you're when you're freaking out and you don't know why, it's because that fragment's freaking out. What's going on? So, yeah. But what I just said, as far as the diseases, that's really what you're doing in this ministry. You're getting them to change their thinking, and the more their thinking changes, the more healing begins to come through their body. That's why Christians are going to get healed a lot of them will get healed progressively, like this. The more they start changing, that's why Jesus wants you to start living from joy. What is that proverb where it talks about the joy is, it's medicine to your bones or something like that? Okay? Do you understand why healing is so important? Why it's so important, why Jesus wants you to be in the right frame of mind? He's not trying to lay rules down on you to appease the Father's wrath, He's doing it because he wants you to be in health and wellness and joy.
You were mentioning, I think, a while ago about Brittany having some issues with generational stuff. How does that fragmentation come into being?
Well, there's demonic that comes upon the DNA, and they ride on your DNA over time. And sometimes it will just the demonic just has more access to the parts that are already fragmented, and some things that are already fragmented in the womb. So a lot of times when deliverance ministries are casting out demons, they're casting them off of fragments. They just wouldn't know the access, because the generational curse is just basically giving access to torment the generations, without the person having to make any decisions to be tormented.
So to go after the fragment part is really the key, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like a portal for the demons to attach itself to that. So if you're actually pulling at the root, to me, it would be like the root of the problem.
Yeah. It is the root of the problem. And that's why I was saying, when you do surgery, you're working right on the organ. That's why you can see so much healing so much faster when you work with the fragment, and then rather than just trying to go with the person. Now, I mean, when the person's renouncing stuff, sometimes we have to have the person to do it. I mean, it's kind of iffy. You have to just be led by the Holy Spirit. That's why, again, there's just really no 100% way on how to do this. But you want to go after that wound. Like I said, the demonic it's like a wound, and then the demonic attaches itself to keep it from healing. They attach themselves to those fragments, keep them from ever healing, keep acting those scenarios of pain and trauma over and over again to keep it in a constant state. So the thing always stays fearful. You always stay fearful when you drive under tunnels or ride on an airplane, because there was some sort of trauma. And that fragment, once you start getting in there, messages get sent down, we're going on an airplane, and all of a sudden, getting scared. It's just this an irrational fear. Why am I being afraid? I'm greater as he who is in me than he who is in the world. I'm declaring that over myself. Why isn't it working? Because the fragment doesn't believe that. You believe it. It's your spirit being. But your fragment doesn't believe it. And
So when you're casting out the demons, and I think that what I understand from what you shared earlier, it's important to understand their right to be there. So as you're interrogating them to find out the right, do they reveal the fragment at that time?
Uh,
The fragment may come to the surface?
No, they not usually, but most of the time I try to go after the fragment, and like I'm most. It just depends. Sometimes I'll push the demon out of the way, and I'll just go right after the fragment, and I want to get the fragment to get healed.
But you said earlier that sometimes it's easy to confuse a fragment for a demon.
Uh huh.
So when you're doing deliverance, you know, when you're trying to deliver a person, you know, do you always go in with the understanding that there may be a fragment involved? At what
Yes.
point do you realize that there's a fragment involved?
The questions answered?
What's that?
Did the questions answered, the questions that you asked, help you find the fragment?
Well, what I will use, the next session is I was going to talk about how to get it to come up, how to actually make it, yeah, just like I was talking about the demons earlier, how you get them to come up, speak to it, command it, yeah. But, and then we can just have more questions and all that. But, yeah, because I want you to learn how to recognize this and get it to come up, you know, so you can,
Generational.
what's that?
Generational issues, do they affect the way the fragments, in the fragment, are they a part of the fragment issue?
They can be, but generational issues are not always like a big primary thing. It's usually what had happened in their childhood most of the time. So, I mean, you can go on the fragment wouldn't even know what's going on in the generations. You know, that would be something you probably have to get through a dream, because a demon is usually not going to tell you stuff like that. It's hard to get that coming from a spirit. So the Holy Spirit is going to have to reveal that. But just think about we want to work with a lot of the stuff that happened in their childhood. And go ahead.
What about fragmenting when you're older too? Can that happen as well?
Yeah, it can. But usually the more mature you are, and especially the more you grow in the Lord, you're not going to run from life. Because see, it's like when you get older and you start you're gonna there'll be less fragmenting when that happens.
I mean, I'm not saying just so much us, but just people out in the world though, because I mean, they're older and they could be in their
Yeah.
70s and.
Yeah, but even secular people, once they start knowing how to deal with life, and they know how to put up a wall and things like that, they won't do that.
So what's the typical age when you don't see the fragment? Like, well, you said
Yeah.
the guy had a 69-year-old.
Yeah, but usually the teenage years is when it kind of narrows out.
90% before age 14.
Yeah.
Like traumas are the ones that trigger others after that.
Right. So you're not gonna see too many going on in their 20s unless they made up something like that.
Severe trauma.
Or severe trauma. Yeah. And so a lot of times a person, if they've gotten so used to working that way with their fragments, they will start keep living their life from their fragments. So what I'm trying to do with the core of the person is you're doing two things. You're working on the fragments, but you're also working on the core of the person. So it goes back to like what I'm saying. I got to also teach the core of the person identity. I got to teach them their image of God, and I got to teach them how to see the world and how to deal with it, because you're really training the core of the person to learn how to take over. You're weaning them off of their fragments because they've been using their fragments so long, but it's their choice if they want to do it. I mean, and sometimes it'll be a quicker process for some, a slower process for others, and you can't really, you can nudge to an extent, but it's up to them as how much they want to grow, And I've seen people they make some really good efforts, and that's kind of the goal, is to just you can do it, you can go forward, and I know you can because you're strong, and you just encourage them, keep moving them forward, growing them in their identity, because you want to really grow the core of the person. They need to. If the core of the person is not growing strong, well, don't expect the fragments to surpass them. So that's why I talked about in the beginning of this, I'm going to work on the person's image of God, work on their identity. I'm going to sit down. I'm not going to deal with fragments right off the bat or demons off the bat. I want to know what the person believes at the core, and I want to make sure that person comes out, and I could work on them for months before I even go any time with the fragments. because I need that part to be in charge, because if the core of the person isn't willing to be in charge, you can't do anything really. The core of the person has to be in charge, and that takes time. That's why you just have to sit with the person and be patient with them week after week. Like I said, for me, I just spend an hour with the person, and don't put expectations on them. They got to get to this point. If you're going to be with them for a couple of years, 3, 5 years, then it is what it is. Just be willing to make the commitment with them, because they could only grow as fast as they are willing to grow. So.
This is sounding to me like it's a lot more prevalent than,
It is. It is.
and so some of what I've read, there's a book called When Rabbit Howls, and it's a woman who's 35 or 40. Before she recognized it, she had it together because everything was coalesced,
Mm-hmm.
although it was very fragmented.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like a head nurse in some situation, and then suddenly things start falling apart. She gets home and she's not wearing the clothes she was when she left, versus the ones she remembers putting on. And that sort of thing happened later on in her life. So sometimes I think that the stuff from early on manifests in a more broken way later on.
Mm-hmm.
But I like this.
Yeah. I honestly, I love it. I love doing this ministry because of the fruit I've been seeing from it, and seeing how it and then the aspect of bringing Jesus into this, and that's what I'm going to be talking about later tonight, is about when you start working with Jesus and you bring him into it. You watch Jesus again. You really see Jesus come in and just do his stuff. He is such the champion when he goes in there and sets those people free. And you watch it. You're just a spectator. Like I said, you're just the orchestrator, the chaperone, whatever, and you just watch him do his stuff. Go ahead.
Peace comes over their face. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Todd, that's why what you said about, I think it's more prevalent than we realize. That's why I keep saying, if you want to learn this, for myself, I could book myself 6 days a week. I could book myself 7 days a week. There's that much need. And
Well, I'm just kind of looking at it personally. I figure I got 4 or 5 fat fragments. They're skinnier fragments. They just make up the whole.
excuse me, I'm sitting here thinking, if you understand this, why aren't you teaming with me?
He is. It's just not
You
right.
could do it. That is a good idea. I think you'd be good.
We'll talk to that fragment later. I need a government grant from the real government.
Think what's really weird, I bet you found this, as you do this, you're going, I have a demon in that area. I have a demon bugging me there, and I've got fragment.
Well, yeah. I mean, you do, and I'm not trying to say that overtly, because the people go, we got to be careful because everybody's going to get like witch hunt type mindset where this person has got this. That's what that means. Okay, I'm just saying. We all got stuff, and like I said, nobody looks like Jesus yet. So why in the world are we going to try to make a lot of stuff up and pretend on the outside when it's not looking that way? Okay, our bodies are still decaying. We're still getting sick. We're still having emotional stuff, and we're pretending like it's not there, and that's not working. It's just not working. Okay. Like I can be in a meeting and we can have the Holy Spirit on us and we can get really, full on with the Lord, and then go back, and then we can, something can trigger us and we just go back into that state of unrest, or, and it's just not supposed to be there. You don't have to get this dealt with in you. You don't have to get demons cast out. They can be there. It doesn't matter. God's still going to love you. You're still going to be amazing in God. You can still do miracles with all this stuff in you. It's just you can have, if this stuff gets out of the way, you'll see more breakthrough. You'll see more things happen. It's just removing hurdles out of your life, and it just opens the door for even more intimacy with God. Like I said, when we got certain fragments out of the way, all of a sudden the picture of the Father just became so much more clearer. That's all God wants. He wants you to be able to experience him and see him to the fullest. He wants it all. He wants you to have all of him. All of them. That's when you just look at it, this is just offering. If you're being honest with yourself, there's hope and there's freedom available, because we've tried so many things. We've tried this and we've tried that, and there's probably some other things that the Father wants to reveal to his children more and more about how to get free. And as we become more open to it, God's going to keep revealing it, because he wants us to operate at the highest level possible. He absolutely does. That's his heart. It's what it's all about, what Jesus had said. You know, I've come to give life and give it abundantly so your joy can be made full. I go, that's my standard. I'm going to go after that. Now, I can have joy in the meeting and I can have joy here, but it's supposed to be an ongoing lifestyle all the time. You see, you could live your life trying to manage your behavior. You can, because that's really what we're going to do. I mean, we be in the meeting, we're going to have the joy of the Lord on us, and we'll hug everybody, and we'll feel great. And then when we're around the wrong people that rub us the wrong way, that can trigger us, it'll come. And then I'm going to have to work to manage that. I'm going to have to work to manage that. What if you don't have to manage that because it got healed? So that person that triggers you and says that thing, you have no reaction that you have to actually manage anymore. You don't have to manage that behavior and respond, because there's nothing to respond to, because there's no wound there anymore. That's what it does. Yeah. So, okay. So we'll meet again later and just finish it off on how to do this. And yeah, 7.
Have you ever run across anybody that was codependent upon himself?
Upon himself? No, never.